Welcome to Watch Read, a new and undoubtedly sporadic series on my channel where I recommend books to fans of a certain TV show or movie. The first episode will be about one of my favorite shows, Stranger Things. Stranger Things takes its inspiration from the supernatural coming-of-age stories that were popular in the 1980s and which I watched as a kid, not from any particular book. So in order to pick books for this episode, I broke that down into its genre, supernatural coming-of-age stories, and focused particularly on those written or set in the 1980s. To start, we have two from the master of supernatural coming-of-age stories, Stephen King. The first of these is It, an incredibly long novel about a group of around 12 or 13-year-old kids who discover this demon in their town and come back, 20 years later, to fight the demon again as adults. I have not read this book because I saw the original movie far too young and am now too afraid of clowns to read the book. Seriously, they really creep me out. The book was recently made into yet another movie, which I did not watch because I am much too much of a scaredy cat, but the gifs of which remind me aesthetically of Stranger Things. Then there's also Firestarter, about a young girl discovering that she has psychic powers, a bit like our beloved Elle. I read most of this when I was a teenager. I don't remember if I ever finished it. I may have, I may not have. No way to know now. But I really enjoyed it when I read it, to the point that I can still remember really enjoying it 10 years later. If your favorite characters are Elle or Callie, maybe this would be the book for you. Seriously, I want a spin-off about Callie and her group. I want a whole spin-off. I want a novel series. At least give me a comic book series, duffers. Next is Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan. This is a comic book series that's collected into volumes, which is how I've been reading it. So far there are 4 volumes out, though I've only read the first 3 because the 4th came out in April and I haven't been able to get my hands on it yet. This is about 4 12-year-old girls in the 80s who meet during their paper routes, thus the title Paper Girls, and who get sucked into a sci-fi conspiracy much bigger than themselves. They get brought forward and backward through time, they meet an older version of one of themselves, they go back to the Stone Age. It's really good. When I read the first volume, after I finished it, I thought, this really reminds me of Stranger Things. And it's so good. I would recommend this to everyone, Stranger Things fan or not. And if you want to hear me gush about it more, tune into next week's Comics I Love video. The next book is The Boys of Summer by Richard Cox. This starts out in 1979 in Wichita Falls, Texas, when 9-year-old Todd Willis falls into a coma after a tornado rips through town. 4 years later, in 1983, he wakes up and he makes new friends and there's some hallucinations going on, kind of like Will's hallucinations. The book chronicles the summer of 1983 when Todd is now 13 and awake from his coma, and the supernatural coming of age of him and his friends, 3 other boys and a girl. It also flashes forward to 2008, 25 years later, when they're all coming back to their hometown, having no longer been friends after that summer. I had never heard of this book before I found it online compared to Stranger Things on the Barnes & Noble blog, but I'm excited to read it, so maybe this summer. Last, but definitely not least, Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. This is the oldest and most classic of these novels, published first in 1962. It tells the story of 2 13-year-old best friends, Will and Jim, in the summer of 1962 when a carnival comes to their town. The carnival is not a normal carnival though, of course it's not. It's run by a man called Mr. Dark who is actually trying to feed off the energy of the citizenry. I really want to read this one too because I enjoy Ray Bradbury's short work and I don't think I've ever read a full novel, so I'll keep you posted. In the comments, tell me about your favorite books that remind you of Stranger Things, or if you've read any of these, tell me about them. Thanks for watching, I hope you're well. Bye.